There you have it.
That's the clean room?
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. That's where you blow the balloons?
That's where we blow the balloons.
Excellent.
That was a fun ride.
Yeah.
Miami style, God.
I've gotten the chance to meet so many people in the medical device industry over 3 decades, and this show is about them.
Thanks so much for coming out.
Yeah, totally.
These are normal people doing superhuman things. It's about showing the people, the places, the culture, and the technology that is saving and extending lives. Flagstaff is a STEM city, and per capita, it very well may have more PhDs than any other city its size. And Dan Kasperzik is one of those geniuses.
So today we are, what's today, Tuesday? I'm losing track.
Yeah, you've been here a while.
Right. I passed out because Danny kicked my on the ride the other day. The bike ride.
Not true.
Sort of. But we're at Poba Medical in Flagstaff. Dan Kasperzik and his team. And what does POBA stand for?
Plain old balloon angioplasty. It's key to come up with the right name for your companies.
Were you the marketing genius on that?
I was the marketing genius on that, yeah.
POBA, a simple name but not a simple task. His balloon technology continues to absolutely blow my mind year after year. No pun intended.
Tell me what this thing does. What's the balloon do? The general science behind it, Dan.
So the science behind this is that we're interested in attacking and eradicating Barrett cells. Barrett cells are known to advance to esophageal cancer. Esophageal cancer is a gruesome disease, and patients with Barrett's have a likelihood of advancing to esophageal cancer. So the goal with this device is to ablate these cells at an early state, eradicating them so that the patient doesn't have to eventually face an esophagectomy and all the trials and tribulations that go on with fighting cancer of any type. We're looking down the bore of the esophagus through this polycarbonate tube, and as we manipulate the antenna, you're seeing it rotate. You're also seeing that green hue, which would be pointed on the esophagus, and we're able to ablate around this entire circumference. So now we want to move it
And
Move it down to the next section.
green hue on the right side, the green hornet hue, that's where the energy is being delivered?
That's where the energy is being delivered. Now the clinician doesn't have to guess if that's going to be where he ablates. He knows exactly where that ablation is going to start, and that LED will follow the ablation all the way around the circumference of the esophagus.
As an entrepreneur, you pivoted this technology from another technology.
Pivoting is not something I ever planned on. It's not something I ever want to do again, but sometimes life happens, right?
Yeah, right.
Dan originally created this device to treat hypertension, and he realized it wasn't going to work. On hypertension, at least. But esophageal cancer? Bullseye.
You've got to have the ability as an entrepreneur to make quick decisions, align and motivate your team with those decisions, and then just hope like hell they're the right decisions. You know, we got hit blindsided by the Medtronic hypertension study trial that showed that in the control arm of a sham-controlled study that the hypertension was actually performing better in the patients that weren't getting treatment than the patients that were getting treatment. So, I mean, we got together as a team and said, look, how are we gonna survive? How do we get to advance? And at the end of the day, Barrett's esophagus seemed like a really, really good target for it because it's cancer. I mean, we're preventing patients from advancing to esophageal cancer, arguably the most aggressive, gruesome disease state in all of cancers. And it's the least understood. 20,000 patients a year die from esophageal cancer in the U.S.
And how many more suffer?
How many more suffer?
Yeah.
And you know, an esophagectomy, removing your esophagus surgically and stretching your stomach up to your throat, you now have to relearn how to eat, how to swallow, how to talk. I mean, it's not a clean disease. So pivoting to something that we felt was a tangible path that allowed us to eventually create value for our early shareholders. I mean, that's all I was thinking about.
I learned years ago the difference between focus and fixation. Fixation has blinders on you, creating a hostage situation, the inability to consider alternatives. Focus, however, is a superpower that ultimately allows you to burn through problems with a wider perspective.
So there's a balloon, right? So that's a typical balloon that we would be using. And you blow these, and these get used millions of times a year.
They get used a single time and they get thrown in the trash can.
A million times a year.
A million times a year, yeah.
And this gets blown up to a pretty high PSI, doesn't it?
It does. This will see about almost 30 atmosphere.
My car tires are 42.
Yep.
So that's the pressure on that.
42 PSI.
Right.
This
right.
is what? So 30 times 14.7.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
So that's seeing a lot more pressure than my car tire. So where are these balloons
The
used and how
balloons,
does it?
They're used for drug delivery throughout the body. They're
So we'll
used
put a
for,
drug on a balloon,
Correct.
shuttle it
You can
down somewhere in the body.
Impregnate it, inflate it, and it's actually called nylon sweating, where you release the drug into the vessel.
And why is that important? Because I can, instead of systemically put drug into the body where it hits the whole body,
You
I
can
can
get it directly
put the drug.
site-specific.
Site-specific, and really your drug's purpose is really to keep that vessel open longer than the balloon alone or the stent alone. The brain, it's the spine, it's the women's health, it's the leg, it's the ankles, it's the wrists, it's
All these use
the
balloons.
sinuses, it's the eyes. We're doing balloons for use in ocular vessels that are tiny little vessels in the eye. There's a cycle time that Christian develops related to the recipe to produce the end product.
There's an art to this and a science, and Christian's one of those artists.
Da Vinci said, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else. Successful entrepreneurs see what others do not. More importantly, beyond seeing is having the constitution to take action and pursue what makes sense versus the notorious thinking of big box organizations who tell you that you are not qualified, don't have the right degree, or you're too old, which, by the way, is dubious HR speak for you're overqualified.
You're first gen here, right? You said your mom was from Mexico?
Yep. My mom was actually born in Mexico, and my dad was born in New York. Ended up in Arizona as a military brat.
So you grew up here, though?
I did, yeah.
So you were at Gore for how many years?
8 years,
You go there right out of high school, right out of college?
right out of high school.
You did not finish a four-year degree.
Right,
But what's cool is you found an entrepreneur who doesn't care about that.
right.
He cares about what you're going to knock out of the
Yeah.
park.
Substance, yeah.
Right.
I wanted to start challenging myself, you know? I wanted more. I saw that there was more in my future than where I was.
Right. Or what somebody else wanted to put on you.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So I had heard through the grapevine that there was a balloon contract manufacturer that was gonna open up shop in Flagstaff. And that happened to be the technology that I had worked years on and learned really, really well.
How did you run across Danny Kaspersek?
So Dan, I found him on Facebook with 2 followers on
Wait a
Facebook.
minute, Kaspersek had 2 followers?
2 followers for
His mom and his
Boba
dad or
Medical.
something?
Yeah. 2 followers, yeah. And I sent them a message there. Didn't think that I was gonna do even going to Boba. It's enabled me to take on responsibilities that I never would have imagined.
I've always believed in hiring best athlete. The architects of great teams care less about a headline and more about skills, who happen to look at problems a bit differently.
You gonna make your kids go to 4-year college?
I am, yeah. I absolutely am. Straight up, I'll tell you why. The reason is I've always had to be, it's an easier path. It's an easier path, and I want them to the fast track. I don't want them to have to do twice the work to prove their worth compared to somebody that has the paper. The degree is nothing without the drive, But I think if you have both, you're set up.
The world is notorious for trying to scratch identities into our psyche, inbred in us all the way from childhood. Who we can be and who we can't be. Always remember, those are fears of others. Ultimately, living with or without limits is your choice. They're setting out to do something completely different. Disruption, decoupling. We all take a different path. And that takes me to Mother Road Brewery for a pint of Flagstaff's finest ale and a chat with serial entrepreneur Kirsten Hathcock. a former corporate employee who decided to burn the boats and leave her day job to pursue making kids' furniture.
I was building constantly. I was covered in sawdust day and night. My poor husband, had to sleep with me, and I would have like sawdust everywhere. I'd just fall into bed. God bless him. So that was my life, and I kept thinking, I need to scale this.
Needing help with growing her business, Kirsten decided to jump into a tank with sharks, literally.
How'd the Shark Tank thing declare itself? That doesn't happen by accident.
It doesn't. My dad, funny enough, was the one who saw. I was on the second season, so he saw an episode of the first season, and he called me and he said, "Kirsten, there's this show. It's in LA. You live in LA. Might as well try it out." And I just said to him, "Hell no."
And being the true entrepreneur she is, she went on and got an offer.
So I got 2 offers on the show. I chose Robert Herjavec because it was a better offer. He actually didn't come through with the money afterwards, which is somewhat common for this show. I didn't know that at the time.
It's for TV.
Right.
With her offer falling through, Kirsten had to pivot yet again in her plan to be an entrepreneur and almost gave up hope.
I learned a ton. There were moments that were really hard. I was on the floor in tears. I got a huge licensing deal with Stanley Furniture.
What did that feel like?
Amazing. It was huge, but it failed.
I know that fetal position all too well. Building my business over the years, I've made payroll and paid the rent using my credit cards. Heck, as an entrepreneur, my venture capital partners for years were American Express, Visa, and MasterCard.
And those are the moments when I just thought, I gotta go back to corporate.
Did you really think that for a moment?
Absolutely.
How long did that last?
About a day.
Yeah. That's what entrepreneurs do, though.
You have
Don't
to
we? We
pivot.
just pivot.
I think it was that quiet voice that I have inside of me that says, keep going. But I also knew that there was a bigger picture I wasn't seeing at the time. And sure enough, it worked out where I ended up just trusting my own gut and trusting my own intuition. And that's what led to the other licensing deal, which has been a dream.
These struggles are classic for entrepreneurs. Scars are life's currency. Embrace them. They are friggin' sexy.
A lot of entrepreneurs think it's just, if they're making $250 at Medtronic, they're going to make $250 at XYZ. It just doesn't work that way.
But being an entrepreneur is making hard decisions.
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done is fire my brother.
You fired your brother.
I fired my brother. I knew he had kind of overstayed his welcome. He had taken the brand and the business to a certain point where he wasn't as useful to me as a CEO. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And well, now my son works at the company. I hope I don't have to fire
I hope
him.
you have to fire him, too.
I'm not there. I don't know.
What was the opening line?
That's a really good question. I was so nervous. I think I just said, "You're fired." I think it was that straightforward.
Did you give him a severance?
He did get a severance.
All right.
Yeah. No, he got.
Firing your sibling, downing a bunch of beer, blowing balloons, and rejecting the idea that your life was written just because you didn't have a college degree. Sorry, Boston. Sorry, San Fran. But for now, Flagstaff's got my heart.